I don't believe in it.
Hello, folks. Welcome, everybody. We are live here at Printavo University. We're going to be talking about sales today, selling some shirts. I'm real excited. As with every Printavo University, we love to see who's in the audience. So in the chat, let us know who you are and where you're watching from. I'm Nick. I'm on the Printavo sales team. I am out in Los Angeles here in sunny North Hollywood. Yeah, it is sunny outside. As always, this is a live stream, so we want you to ask questions. Let me teach you how to do it. If you look on the right side of your screen, you're going to see something that says questions. You can hit the blue button that says ask a new question. We got an expert on today. I highly recommend if you have a question, shout it out. But as always, we have my lovely co-host. It's Matt Marcotte. Hey, Matt, what's up?
What up? I love how you say I'm in sunny LA and you got me and Dylan both just being like,
it's like just rain and shitty.
Yep. So yeah, I'm stoked for today. Definitely. One thing I do want to actually say to Nick and Dylan, do me a favor and mute the notifications on your screen. That way, folks don't have to listen to that boop 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 all the time as it comes through. So on your little video screen, hit that little bell looking thing to mute the notifications. But yeah, everybody, this is gonna be a fun one. We already see him on the screen, but obviously today we've got Dylan from Upstate Merch, also shirt show, also just life in general being awesome.
You just know me from life.
I know him from life. I know him from all the creepy DMs that we send back and forth. A lot of weird pictures that happen. But it's okay. It's how we get closer. But yeah, I'm stoked for today to chat with Dylan. I actually recently was able to hang out with Dylan in Chicago and learn some things I didn't know about him. Between shirt show, I thought I knew everything about Dylan. There's a whole lot. He's like an onion. The more you get deeper, the more you learn, and the more you cry.
Like ogres.
So yeah, without any further ado, though, everybody, Dylan from Upstate and Shirt Show. What's up, Dylan? How you doing today?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Short and sweet, perfect. Love it.
Yeah.
What do you want me to say?
How are you? What's going on? There's your official Dylan sponsor right there. You're not just going to just take that to the house all the way, chug it on stream?
No, because I want it to last.
No, you're just not gonna throw up in front of everybody.
Things are good. Things are busy. I feel like that's the MO for everybody right now. It is hot as shit out. It's probably 95 degrees out and humid today, and probably about 100 degrees in the shop. So that's awesome. Luckily in my office, it's about 65. But other than that, yeah, just cranking away.
Do you have AC in the actual print shop or no?
No.
Yeah, most people don't.
Well, the thing is
so you're sitting there just like all cold, wearing a jacket, just looking through a window, watching everybody else sweat.
Right. I wait for like Randy to come in like flip flops and shorts with no shirt on, and I've got like a hoodie on, and like
he's covered in sweat, comes in, catches pneumonic, just being in that cold air for that minute.
Sweat dripping down his back. Yeah, it's awesome.
Like, looks hot out there. I'm gonna get back to my Post-it notes. Have a good one, Randy.
No, I feel bad because the thing is like, here in New York, it's usually not that hot. Like summers are like, like 75, 80, 85 degrees. And then at night goes back to like 60 or whatever. And I feel like this summer is just like, it goes in waves of being like 70 to like 100 degrees and like back and forth. So this week's been brutal. It's not normally this way, but it's pretty intense right now.
Yeah, gotta love it. All right, well, we'll move past that sad time of being hot in the print shop because everyone can. All the people listening are like, yeah, we know. Do me a favor though. Tell us a little about you and Shirt Show and Upstate.
Me?
Yeah.
Well, my name's Dylan Gilligan. I own Upstate Merch in upstate New York. I've had a print shop here for 11 years now. I've been in the industry since I was 17 years old. I used to own a button company. That's how I started. And then I grew that, outsourced t-shirts and stickers, that company got bought, and I moved to Atlanta, worked for a print shop there, grew that shop for about 2 years. And then I moved back to New York and started my own company, Upstate Merch. I bought the building here, and we've been in the same building now for, like I said, about 10, 11 years. And things are going great. Everything's working out real well. I also do Shirt Show with my best buddy Andy from ShirtCon. That's pretty much just us shooting the shit, talking shop with everybody. We do screen printing shops. We do artists. We do manufacturers, and realistically, it's just us talking like real talk with people, and saying like pros and cons, shop hacks, all that kind of stuff. It's not censored. We talk a lot of shit to each other, which is the most fun for me. Yeah, so if you want to check that out, it's at Shirt Show Official on Instagram, Shirt Show on YouTube, Shirt Show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
So my biggest takeaway there is if you haven't already watched and or listened to Shirt Show, catch up. It's definitely worth it. I mean, I'm a little biased, so I was on it, but it's legitimately a great time. If you're in your shop and you can just like put it in your ears and listen to it, you're going to laugh. My other takeaway is I thought I was your best buddy. You're telling me.
Yeah. I have a lot of best buddies.
Okay. Best buddy. So none of us are important to you then. I get it now.
Right.
Okay.
Well, once you smooch your best buddy, you're on like another level.
What if you feed each other hard-boiled eggs on a hot day?
Then
because we haven't done this, so I think
what I mean. That's what I mean about another level.
Well, Shirt Show is amazing, and it was definitely inspiration for Matt and I as we were starting out this, and we're so glad you're here, Dylan. Today our topic is sales, selling shirts, and if anybody sold a lot of them, it's you. And when we were talking in our pre-conversation, you mentioned something that really stuck out to me, and I'd love to hear you elaborate on it. You mentioned that you keep it simple for sales. Can you tell us what you mean by that?
Well, for me, simple is just kind of like, I don't want to come on here and act like I'm like this guru on sales at all, because I'm not. What I've done has worked well for me. So for me, simple is just like, I went with what I know, and it worked out. So realistically, when I started the shop, I was really into like bands, and then I knew how to talk to bands. That was the thing, is like, I was like, okay, I know how merch works. I know how when they need it, what's going on, what's popular with merch with bands. So it was real easy to sell to bands because I knew exactly what they wanted. So for me, like I said, it's just work with what you know. So, my thing with that is just kind of like, after bands, I was like, okay, what other avenues can I get into? And it was like, all right, well, I really love movies, and I like comic book stuff, and I like motorcycles. So it was like, okay, I know the lingo to talk to those people. So that's kind of how it just went. It was just a natural thing. It wasn't, something I had to research and like be salesy and feel like a used car salesman.
I think that's an important thing, though, and I know that you might not consider yourself a guru. And we've had Jason from Printavo on, who kind of knows a lot more of the reasoning behind, the psychology behind. The reason I wanted to talk to you is because you're kind of like me. Like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's in there, but at the end of the day, like, you just know what you know from doing it, right?
Right.
And I was like, if anybody knows it from doing it, it's you, and the added experience of talking to lots of folks in depth and learning what they're doing. So the biggest takeaway there is starting off with what you know. Stay in your lane, stay in your comfort zone. I'm not saying don't ever leave that and try to continue to grow, but especially if you're starting off, and I oftentimes think about my business partner at Sound and Fury, Mike, who you've met as well. Hell of an awesome guy. Love him. He's become a phenomenal printer. If I do say so myself, I taught him. But the dude's great. His hardest part is, I think that he gets too concerned about failing, right? So he gets so stuck in his head, and he's like, well, I don't know how to talk to the park district, or I don't know how to talk to this bunch of moms, right? It's like, okay, well, then don't start there. Start with what you know. You're a good-looking bearded dude with tattoos. So let's go talk to some bikers. Let's go talk to some tattoo artists. Let's go talk to bands. Like, he tour managed bands for years. Start off where you know. Find your comfort in that, and it's going to start to bleed over in other places too, right? So you kind of say, you start off with what you knew.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is it's kind of like you start off with what you know. Say I wanted to talk to a band, and I was like, okay, I got their order. But in that band, that dude's wife works for this company. Like, it could be a totally different thing. But she's like, okay, like, my husband really loves working with you, so I'm going to try working with you. And then you end up doing this company, and then that snowballs into this company and this company and this company. And it's just kind of like, you don't need to go after that mom's group. That mom's group will come because of the connection with the other person that you knew and who you talked to.
100%. So I think that actually kind of leads into another kind of question that we have that I think also is part of, and I don't want to call out my business partner, Mike, but I know he's traveling today, so he's not watching, so I'm going to. Fear, right? So going back to like dealing with him, he's trying to understand like where to feel confident. And to be fair, he's gotten way more confident over the last couple of years, and he does bring in quite a bit of sales. He's doing great. But initial fear, right? So like being told no, that rejection. I learned this more when coming down to like doing the sales and consulting for when I was working for T&J selling supplies. I started off in Indiana, then Michigan, then part of Kentucky. My job was literally driving around to print shops, walking in and being like, hey, I sell supplies. I'd like to supply you. They would just yell at me, like, get out of my shop. I got a guy. What do you know? I've been doing it for longer than you've been alive. And it's like, I'm actually a pretty good printer, but okay. Right. And you got treated like shit. But and at first, honestly, it was my first 6-7 months of being a salesperson. I hated it. I actually took the job telling the boss at the time, Sid, it's like, I don't want to be a sales guy. It's like, I don't want you to be a sales guy either. Be you and sales will happen. And that was actually one of those little nuggets that I didn't really appreciate until years later. That you're right. I'm not a salesperson. I'm just going in and I'm amped up about what I'm doing, and so it naturally turns itself into sales.
Like realistically, what you should have done, and I've done this with salespeople too. And it's funny, you can tell the difference between people. And it's like what you should have done is you should have walked in and been like, "Hey, I'm Matt from T&J. I'm just swinging by. Like, what do you got going on?" And like see what they're printing on press, and be like, "Oh, did you know if you did this, that print's going to look a little bit better?" And they're like, "Oh shit!" And then they gain trust. Like you're not doing that to be cheesy. You're just doing that because that's you, and you want to share, and you want to like be helpful. And it's like that's the same way with a lot of this stuff. Is it's like with sales, it's like, you know, you could talk to, say, I don't know, it could be, say it was a BMX company or something. You could go in and be like, oh, like I used to ride that bike when I was like 15 years old, and you know, I've been to this track. Have you been to that track? And then you start talking about tracks, and you do the whole thing, and then the very last part of the conversation, like the very last thing, should be like, hey, by the way, like I own the shop. If you ever need anything, let me know. Like end the conversation. Like don't sell anything, whatever, and then reach out maybe a couple weeks later and be like, hey, I'm just reaching out, you know, seeing if you need anything, you know, I'm in the area again, whatever. And then eventually it'll turn into something. But it's just kind of you should just be you as a human being first, and the very last thing is the sale. Like you're not, I feel like stuff comes and you just need to like know that it's the long game, not necessarily pick up the phone and be like, hey, do you need shirts? Do you need them now? And then like get the order and it sucks and the customer's a dick. And it's like, you don't want that. Like you want to build relationships with people, and then the orders will just come after that. And that's kind of like what we've done here is we're more work on the relationship, and then the other stuff comes after.
100%.
Yeah, I think that's really brilliant. And I want to highlight something Dylan said. Ask questions. You got your pen and paper next to you, write that down. People like to talk about themselves. People like it when you're listening. If you ask questions and make eye contact with the person, they're going to like that. It's just how humans are wired. So I think, like Dylan's saying, you know, you don't even have to ask questions like, hey, do you guys need shirts? Ask questions like, how's your family? What's up? What are you doing? I love your idea about asking about the shared interest that both of you have. So I think that a lot of people think sales is telling, but I think it's listening. So ask questions is a really, really, really good note. With that in mind, okay, it's easier said than done though. So some people I bet are watching, they're like, yeah, man, I know you got to just go out and do it. But a lot of people I've met in the printing industry are a brilliant, amazing artists, but they're also introverted and they're a little shy. So what do you guys think are like baby steps that people could take to actually start doing this and start going out and making asks?
It's kind of a weird thing because like I have different experiences. Like I feel like if I was an introvert and then I started a business and then I had to figure out how to like talk to people, I feel like the best thing I could probably do is like just do as much networking as I could, like go to networking events or something and meet people. That kind of sucks. Like, I don't want to say that's like a great thing to do, but I feel like it would definitely help because I've done that. Like I've gone to networking events for like our chamber. Like I was on the board at the chamber for a while and like going to those events. And sometimes it feels weird because you should just like go with a buddy that you're comfortable with. And then eventually you'll bump into people and talk to people and like grow that. But for me, it was like when I was like 14, 15 and I worked at a grocery store and like being a cashier, I would just like be so bored of just like sitting there. So I would just like shoot the shit with like, you know, people coming through the line. It's like that creepy Target lady who's like, oh, I like this, or, oh, what are you making? And it was just like, just having conversations with people all day. And then after that, I was a ticket taker at a movie theater. So you're just constantly talking to people about, oh, did you see that movie? All this, the ending's awesome. Or just make up like a fake ending to a movie and freak them out.
You're just spoiling it as they walk into the theater.
Right,
You're like, them a fake ending.
That dude dies at the end, and like you just say shit like that, and they're like, what? And then they walk by it and go into the movie. But it's just like, you just got to get comfortable talking to people. Like, I know I have friends too that's just like, they won't pick up the phone. They don't want to ever knock on a door. Like, you know, if we were stranded on the side of the road, I feel like I would feel pretty comfortable just walking up to a neighbor house and like knock on the door and be like, hey, do you have this, or can I use your phone or whatever? I feel like these people would be like, I'd rather walk 35 miles than go to that door and ask like for help. You're
totally right. You actually said some things that I've also recommended to a lot of shops that are, especially newer shops, like, well, I don't know where to begin. The Chamber of Commerce for your local community is absolutely one of the best places to begin. They know all the businesses. They're running a lot of nonprofit stuff. You can go donate your time and do an afternoon help with an event they're running, hand out a bunch of cards, and just be helpful. And that will start to snowball into business. But you also talked about just not caring and saying, I'm going to interact with everybody that comes into my bubble today.
Well, the truth of it is,
it's huge.
I don't want to get like, I don't know, like weird, but it's just kind of like everybody's like just regular ass people. Like, you might look at somebody and be like, oh, I'm scared or nervous to talk to that person. It's like, they're going through bullshit too. And they're like, fuck, does my shirt look good? Like, do I have scuffs on my pants? You know, it's like they're still thinking of things too. Like, everybody just wants to feel comfortable. So going up and just saying hey to somebody is like all you have to do.
I think that part of where, and it's kind of funny because like you learn different life skills in different places. And again, I'm going to call it my business partner, Mike. I love him. He's not watching, so I'm
you're talking so much shit about Mike.
I know. So he's a very good-looking guy, and really, his first girlfriend is his wife now. They've been together for freaking ever, right? So
go, Mike.
I look at him and go, well, hang on a second. I guess you never got used to rejection. I, on the other hand, had it in aces, right? Nonstop rejection growing up over the years. It's one of those things where like you get like you're in your 20s, like you go try to talk to a girl at the bar, and they're like, please don't talk to me. You're like, ouch, that hurts. And then you go sulk for 10 minutes, and then you try again, right?
Right.
So like it's one of those things. And there's a funny show. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Ted Lasso on Apple TV. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's a soccer show. I don't like soccer. It's genius.
But he dies at the end of season 1. Right?
But he dies at the end of season 1. No, but Jason Sudeikis, the comedian, he's got a line in there that says, be a goldfish. And the reason for that is because apparently, and I learned this in the show, goldfish have the shortest memory span. So whenever something comes your way that sucks, be a goldfish. Forget it. Move on. Right? So like learn how to take the no. If you have to learn a lesson from it, learn that lesson from it, and then forget it and keep going. Right? So I think a lot of this persistence is key. So if you're not comfortable like having a conversation with a stranger, that's okay. You don't necessarily have to be like overly outgoing or I'll talk to anybody. Right?
But
start.
The thing
start having those little micro interactions.
The thing with the sales too is it's like sometimes when you get a no from a customer, it might actually be the best thing for you because you're not ready for that yet. You know what I mean? Like when we were a smaller shop, there were people we were going after because we were just hungry and we were like, oh, we're gonna go after like fucking like we almost had a big contract with like the New York Mets, like the real Mets, not like our local Mets team. It was like the fucking went to Citi Field, and there was this crazy story that me and Chris like basically got in contact with the procurement guy there, and he was like, oh, we want to have a meeting or whatever. Like he thought we were just like a bigger merch company, and like he wanted to have a meeting and talk about stuff. And we're like, okay, like we'll be there, whatever it was, like Tuesday at noon or something. He's like, okay, cool. We drove like 3 hours to get to the Citi Field, and it was just me and Chris like dressed like normal. Like I won't dress up for anybody for the most part. Like this is how I look all the time. So like I came in at the time with like an American Apparel black hoodie and like jeans and like clean shoes, and Chris had I think like a button-up shirt on. We walk in and this place is like fucking like marble floors. Like people are coming up to us asking us if we want like Perrier or like, you know, like fancy waters and shit, and we're like, oh my god, what did we get ourselves into? And we went up and just like shot the shit with the guy, like the head guy for ordering stuff for the Mets. And he would like immediately, as soon as we walked in the door, he's like, "Oh, I can tell you artsy types." He's like, "You just don't give a shit what you look like." And it was like one of the best like opening lines, because the dude was just knew, he knew we were in over our heads and we were just there like, "Oh God, like let's get this." But the funny thing was, is he didn't know, he thought we were from like New York City. He didn't know we were from like upstate New York. And he was like, "Holy shit, you guys drove here?" He's like, "We could have done this on like a Zoom call or like a Skype or whatever at the time." And we were like, "No, we drove here. We made a day trip out of it." And he was just stoked that like we were there. And he ended up like giving us the business. It was like for the shirts in the stadium, like the giveaways, they would like drape over the chairs and stuff. And the funny thing is that dude also had his hand in like small TV shows and like different things, like art things in New York City and like all this other stuff. And we still to this day like do those orders. And it was like, there's a lot of things like that. You never know like what you're going to get into, but there's also a lot of people like that we tried to hit up that said no. And it's good that they said no, because we couldn't handle it. We had like 2 manuals and like a small dryer at the time. Like nowadays, like we're a bigger shop and like people come up to us and they come to us now, and it's weird. It's like, I couldn't have gotten you in a million years, like 5 years ago. And now we're getting you because we can handle it. And it's nice to know now that like we can handle it and it's fine. So sometimes you need to just take that no and move on and go to stuff that's more in your lane.
I think, Dylan, I think that's exactly right, because a lot of people fear no. But like you said, maybe that is you weren't ready for that deal. Maybe that customer would be a huge pain in the butt. Maybe you just don't offer what they want, which, you know, I'm used to selling software. I've sold Printavo for the last 4 years. And sometimes people want it to do a thing it doesn't do. Well, you tell them that, and then they say no. But as long as the conversation's pleasant, as long as nobody lost their temper and everybody was nice the whole time, and as you're talking about, that's how it was with all those conversations, they will come back. They will come back when they do want the thing you sell. So I think that the people who, you know, you mentioned the people who 5 years ago you never would have closed those deals. I think part of the reason you're closing them now is because those conversations 5 years ago went well. It's just they said no at the end. But that doesn't necessarily mean the conversation went badly. It just means that they evaluated it and they chose no at the time. But in the future, they might choose yes.
Yeah.
I think authenticity also comes across, right? So if you are authentically true to who you are and you're trying to do what you want to do, like your business pillars, your personal pillars, and you stay true to those things, even a no is okay to say. And again, you'd rather be true to yourself and say no than sell out for something that you know isn't going to actually match up with your business, your persona, who you are, and what you want.
Right. And that goes back to just being you and like talking to people that you know things about. It's like the worst feeling ever is like, it's like that feeling in high school of like knowing damn well you didn't do your homework, or like you didn't study for a test and then you have to do that test and you just feel like an asshole the entire time trying to act like you know what you're talking about. And it's like, talking to like customers that you know about that product or you know about like their business is so much more helpful. It's like with me with like the screen printing stuff, it's like I'm visiting shops and going out and doing these things. Like if I didn't know like little technical things or like things that could help them or things that like I'm just constantly absorbing things like this, like Printavo stuff on YouTube and like all these other things to like educate myself better, to have that better conversation. So it's the same thing. It's like stay in your lane. I feel like that's the biggest thing. Like there's more than enough work to go around out there print wise if you just focus on the shit that you're good at.
Yeah, I agree. So I got a question, and thanks folks for typing questions in the questions area. Definitely keep doing that. Any of them that are kind of off subject, I might not get to, but the ones that are on topic, I'll definitely ask. So I got Mikey Sanchez asking, is that why we should never turn down small orders? I think that was in reference to like working with people and like watching them kind of grow and prosper. My answer to that is if you don't have time for it, it's not a good fit. They're beating you up on price. You don't think it's going to be a good relationship in the future either. Then yeah, still turn down a small order. The size doesn't necessarily matter. Being true to yourself and the customers that you also want to attract and have. Now, if it's not the customer you want, but it's an easy enough order and you can squeeze it in, then yeah, you should take those when possible. But what's your thoughts on that, Dylan?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just like what you just said is kind of like if it makes sense for you and you can do it, you should do that small order. And like I've had that before where We did a small order for this lady. She went to like 4 or 5 different shops. And this was when I was in Georgia, and she went to a couple shops because she had like, I don't know, it was like a 10-piece order, and like most shops minimum was like 25 or 15 or whatever it was. And she came to me one day and she was like, hey, I just really need these like 10 shirts for the softball team, whatever. And I was like, she was just a nice lady, and I was like, yeah, hell yeah, let's do it. So I like put the order together, whatever, did the whole thing. And again, that was an order where that lady, her real job, her day job, was ordering shirts for the Atlanta Braves. So like me getting in with her on that 10-piece order got us the account for the Atlanta Braves. And like that, as far as I know, that company I worked at like still does that stuff. And those are like massive orders too. Those are like, hey, like we need, like 40,000 shirts for Sunday or whatever. And it's like, that came from that 10-piece softball order.
That's huge. I got another one. Might be a little bit harder to answer. And I kind of want to break down his question and kind of go through. But Gavin's asking, what are some exact words are you using for closing sales? Example, please. So I think he's looking for like almost like a pitch. My instinct is that it's not necessarily something to always want to have a candid elevator pitch that you're just going to try to throw somebody, because I think that usually, at least for me, that comes off as inauthentic. I think kind of more trying to take that natural approach of finding out more first, like what do they want shirts for? And then are you a good fit for them? And don't be afraid. I find in my experience, like, don't be afraid to say like, well, first I want to make sure we're going to be a good partnership, right? So then it's kind of like a two-way sales street. It takes away that onus on them to determine if they want you. Now you're kind of breaking it down like, let's make sure we want each other here, right? And then it starts to develop an actual relationship and a business relationship as well to then go from. What are your thoughts on Gavin's question?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with some newer shops is they just think there's like this magic recipe for like people to get all these orders. Like they have this special sales script or whatever. But the truth of it is it just takes a lot of time, and it takes like, building relationships with people. We have used kind of like a somewhat of an email script when you're trying to go after new people. Like if you're not just waiting word of mouth for stuff to come in, like you kind of have to approach people somehow. So like a lot of it is kind of just being like, hey, how are you doing? Starting a conversation like we talked about. But then there's like these bullet point notes of like, okay, maybe we should touch on this. Maybe we should touch on this. But realistically, it's just like, you don't want to come at them salesy because they're immediately going to put up a barrier. They're going to put up like, oh, this dude's trying to sell me. You know what I mean? You kind of want to come at them of like something you probably should say. It's just like, I'm not sure if we're a good fit for you yet. Like as soon as you say that, they're like, oh shit, like this dude's not like trying to do everything possible to sell me. He's trying to just see if we actually are compatible to like work together. So like a lot of times I'll be like, yeah, I don't know like if we're going to be great together yet. Like tell me more about like what you're trying to do. And then they're like, well, we ordered shirts from this other guy and like the print was good, but the shirts fit like shit or they were rough or whatever. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, have you tried like Bella Canvas 3001 CVC? Like that's one of our favorite shirts. And they're like, oh no, last time we got like a Gildan soft style, not like bashing Gildan or anything, but like I would be like, suggest a couple other brands. And then the very next thing I would do after that, like if you can tell they're interested, is I'm immediately sending an email to my SNS or Broder rep being like, hey, send this customer like a large of a next level of Bella and something else. And then the funny part is they have so many warehouses that a lot of times that customer's going to get it like the very next day. So like you started that conversation and they're like, oh, he's trying to sell me. But realistically what you did is you put in some leverage with a wholesaler and like got them samples like within 24 hours. And they're like, holy shit, like you were serious and like you're trying to help us. Like you didn't charge me for these samples, whatever. Like realistically, even if you had to buy them, like it's like fucking like $4. Suck it up. Like, if you're trying to get that sale, $4 is nothing. So just get them some samples. And then after that, like I said, in that conversation, just be like, all right, I'm happy to help you. I'll call you back tomorrow after you get the samples. And then the next day they have physical samples in their hand of like blanks. Cause that in that conversation, that was their concern. You know what I mean? The other company did a great print, but the shirts sucked. So now you're taking the next step of trying to fix that and give them a better shirt. And then you've already got them on the hook now, because they already know you put in the legwork and spent money to try to help them out. And that's what's gotten us a lot of like real big customers. It's just like the immediate, here, I'm here to help, not just like emails back and forth, because that's free and anybody can do that. It's like tangible, like this is what we're doing to try to help you out.
That's brilliant. Everybody write that one down on your pad. Send them tangible samples. Send them something in their hand that they can hold. Gavin, I have 2 ideas for you. I have 2 verbiage language things that you can use. The first one is at the top of the conversation. You should ask the person, is now a good time to talk about this? Because if it's not, they are not going to tell you yes. If you're bugging them when they're doing something else, they're not going to say yes. Ask that. You could use that exact verbiage. That's the verbiage I use. Or you can figure out how to personalize it, but definitely make sure you have the person's attention when you're talking about it. It seems obvious, but if you're pitching to people who aren't paying attention to you, you might as well just not do it. The other one I'll tell you, Gavin, the one that I think is really less of what you're saying and more of how long you're waiting. At the end of your pitch, you tell them, you're going in for the close. Time to get that money, right? Time to get the credit card out of the wallet. Say something like, so, what do you think? And then bite your tongue, bite your cheek, bite whatever you have to bite to stay quiet. In that silence, they're making up their mind. And hopefully they're going to make up their mind and say yes. But what you don't want to do is, so what do you think? 1, 2, I could go lower in price if you want. You don't want to do something like that. You want to give them time to make up their mind. I think these are all really great tips. And I think that the main question though, or the main takeaway from what I'm listening from Matt and Dylan here, Gavin, is you probably don't want to go in memorizing lines. It's not a play. You want to be reactive to what they're saying and listening to the people. You don't really want to have a pat script that you're reciting.
You just need to be educated enough on what you're trying to talk about to where any question they throw at you, you're going to know the answer to, or at least know a good amount of it. Like if you're just like, oh yeah, hey, what can I do for you? And like go through the spiel, they're going to know immediately. Like you're not the first person to hit them up trying to get them to order stuff. So it's like just having a normal person conversation, even if it's like only a minute long, and you're like, oh, like Nick was saying, like if you can just be like, hey, is now a good time? And they're like, no, now's not great. Like maybe tomorrow at 4:00. You're like, all right, cool. Just make a note, call them back at 4:00 tomorrow.
And another thing that he said too that I want to bring up is the sales happen in the silence often. So Nick's point about biting your tongue is an important one. Now, it might not always come up when it comes to t-shirt sales. If you're trying to go after a larger client, and it is, then yeah, don't talk yourself down. Say what you have to say, put the ball in their court, and shut up. If it feels uncomfortably long, good. Keep waiting. Make them talk first, right? There's a lot of psychology behind that. We don't necessarily get too into it, but if you find a point where someone's kind of stonewalling you in the conversation, be the bigger stone. Shut up more, right? They're going to have to talk. They're going to have to fill that silence. And it usually tends to be that you're now running that conversation, and that helps. I got a question from somebody, and Andy Rudiman. I don't know this guy.
That?
I'm not sure. He's got a question. I was at Publix yesterday, and the cashier asked me if I needed any ice, which I forgot that I actually did. Do you ever upsell like that, or do you think it's too salesy? Good question, Andy Rudman.
This was a very Andy question, because he had to put in the like that he drove to Publix, walked into Publix, went to Publix. He couldn't just say a cashier asked me for ice. He had to give me a backstory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I love you, Andy, so much. Yeah, I mean we do, but it's usually an upsell on more colors or a better garment, not necessarily like, hey. I'm not really into promotional products. So like, I feel like a lot of companies are like, and me and Andy just had this conversation that's going to come out on Monday. And it's like, if you're into promotional products, you could be like already having their logo and being like, hey, giving them the quote or the final invoice on the t-shirts, and then also show them like pricing and photos of like their logo on like mugs and pens and like things they didn't know they could get from you. And then they're like, oh shit, for an upsell of whatever, like $50, you can get like a couple hundred pens or whatever it is. then they have good luck with like that upsell. But us here, we just mainly focus on printing. So like I said, if I can upsell them on the fact of like, oh, let's do more colors, because that's how you make more money in screen printing. Or if you're, give them a more of a premium garment where you're going to make a little bit more money on, then do that. But that's our number one upsell, is kind of like if somebody just comes in and doesn't know, because most of the people that come to you don't know about printing or don't know about shirts. They just know they need shirts. So a lot of them are just like, hey, I need shirts. I've heard of this brand Gildan before. I guess I'll go with those. And you're like, well, actually, like, what are you looking for? What are you trying to use? That's the biggest thing, is being like, well, what are you using these for? Because you don't want to sell a construction guy on like Bella 3001. He's going to want the Gildan 8000 or the Hammer or something that's like durable and thick that he's going to beat the piss out of, and then be back in a month to order more for his crew again. So it's like, find out what their needs are, and then maybe upsell on the fact of like, well, this is a better shirt, and this is better for you to wear around town, and this is a better shirt for you to wear while you're at work. So we do that a lot of times with like the tradespeople, is be like, okay, let's do, say they ordered like 300 shirts. We'll be like, all right, we'll order 200 work shirts and 100 softer shirts, so that your guys can have walking billboards basically after work, walking around town with nicer shirts on, not the one that's got like fucking spackle all and paint all over and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that upsell for those other 100 shirts for that kind of order.
I think there's some other fun things you can do with the upsell strategy as well. Kind of like what you're talking about, where maybe they're ordering, maybe they decide they want to go with a G5000, right? So get those. I at my shop tend to have a good handful of other garments too. So I might look at it and go, okay, well, the customer that came in, I'm assuming he's going to be an extra large. I've got an American Apparel 2001 W on my shelf. I'm going to go ahead and print that. I'm going to put it outside the box and say, hey, got your actual order of your G2000s, but I had an extra one of these laying around. I thought you might dig this cut and this feel of the shirt. Maybe for next time you want to go with that route. And then they're going to actually have it and go, oh, yeah, actually, in the next order, I'm going to go with that garment. I'm going to make a little bit more money. It's going to be a little bit of a premium product. Or if someone comes in and they're like, yeah, I want to have this 3-color front and 3-color back on this shirt, and you kind of mention, do you want to go discharge, make it softer? Like, no, I'm good with what it is. If you happen to have, so at my shop, I've got shop shirts extra where I usually try to do discharge water-based printing. I'll throw one of my shop shirts in that too, right? And I know Corey at Floodway, he throws his shop shirts into like almost every order. I think that's great because they're going to be like, oh, a gift, I'm going to wear your billboard. Oh, and if you make it a premium product on a higher end garment, a higher end print, they might go, why is this one so much better than mine? Oh, well, the product's probably a higher end product. The printing's a higher end print. Maybe I should actually go a little bit higher up. And you're not then having to sell them. You're giving them real world actual examples of what that difference can be if they choose to listen to you and let you actually help give a better product.
Yeah, for sure.
What do we got next, Nick?
All right. Well, we've talked a lot about the approach. We talked a lot about going up to the person, talking to them, getting your foot in the door. But Dylan, I'm curious to hear about following up. So is there a particular deal you guys closed that took a long time to close? And what did you do to close
it? I feel like the funny thing with a lot of this conversation, it goes back to just being a good dude, like, or girl, whatever, it's just like being an honest human being. And like, there was an order, I mean, I have them now where I've gone back and forth with like the conversation and then the samples and then the talking, and then they want to see printed samples and you send them that. It's just kind of like staying on top of it. If it's a real big customer that you're really trying to get, then you kind of need to make notes or put something on the calendar of like, okay, let's have another conversation in a month. Or the thing is a lot of these really big accounts, like big ones that you want to try to get, like take a good amount of time. It's not like you're going to call them one day and they're like, oh, hell yeah, I was just going to order shirts this morning. It's like, no, it's like 4 months down the line or something, you know what I mean? And it's like, hit them up maybe every like couple weeks, like 3-4 weeks. And you're just like, hey, whatever. Unless you're in a normal conversation, then yeah, keep going. But if they're just kind of like on the fence, it's like I said, it's sending samples, it's sending them a care package, it's sending them things like that. And I mean, there was an order that I did where basically it was like a really massive church, and same thing, like I didn't know a ton about like the church world, but I knew that they needed shirts. But again, the dude that I was talking to, we had some stuff in common where he was into certain bands or whatever, and I was into some of the same bands. And we just started off with that conversation. And then he wanted to meet up for lunch and like go over samples and stuff. So I like drove there, met up with him, talked through things. And then it was back and forth with pricing. And then it was everything else. I feel like the biggest thing was just showing face as much as possible, you know, like getting on a Zoom or, and that's something that like Andy has been talking about that he's doing that kind of sparked me to want to do it here, was like a virtual showroom where like we have a conference room that I put samples in now. So like if I wanted to talk to a customer that's in California, I could be, instead of a phone or an email, it's like, hey, do you got time for a Zoom call? And then, you know, click open Zoom and then turn the lights on in there, be like holding up samples, showing them the difference between different ones as far as sizing and everything. And then, like I said, a lot of these people don't know all the things we know about shirts, like fits and print styles and all the things that are available. It's just like telling them as much as you can about what they need. And if they know that you're the expert on that, they're going to trust you to take care of the order. If you just walk in and you're like, I just want to sell you some shirts, like, do you want them or not? Then they're going to be like, fuck you, go away. So I think the whole thing is just like shooting the shit and talking to them, but also educating them as much as possible.
100%. And you have to be reliable, right? So even if you don't get that sale out of the gate, but you're reliable, they can rely on you to keep coming back and just being friendly and casually saying like, hey, whenever you're ready, I'd love to take a shot at your work. Well, you're going to build that relationship. You're going to get it.
It was a thing like last week too, is like, I'm in my office and, you know, we have a real big brewery that we do stuff for. And, the owner of the brewery, there's like this huge like hops guild or something. And they referred that hops guild to us because they know each other really well. And I delegated like an owner. I delegated to Sarah to take care of in customer service. And she came in the next day, was like, hey, I'm not going to be here tomorrow for the first half of the day. I'm going to go meet with the guy at the guild. And I was like, okay, where are you going? She's like, oh, I'm going to Elmira. It was just like an hour and a half away. And she was like, yeah, I'm just going to drive up in the morning. We're going to meet face to face. I'm going to bring samples. I'm going to talk them through the whole thing. Because their biggest thing was they wanted to make sure their biggest concern was getting their exact Pantone correct, because they don't have Pantone books, but they know it was important to them to nail their colors because they had like a very specific green they wanted. And they also were curious about newer, like organic or nicer blanks. So that's exactly what we did. She took a Pantone book and she took a couple blank options and met with them like the next day, like drove an hour and a half, showed face, met with them. And they were like, oh, fuck, they mean business and they're knowledgeable and they brought me everything I needed. That immediately is like sunk in their brain of like, okay, they want to work with us and they're willing to do this stuff to get to work with us. They're not just being like, well, you know, we'll do your first order. And if you don't like it, we'll do something different on the next one. It's like, nobody wants to hear that. They don't want shit fucked up the first time. It's like, take the time in the beginning, get it all right. So it's just the time and relationship, like this whole thing, everything we could say is going to go back to that. I feel like it's just being an honest, good human being and telling them if it's not a good fit, telling them it's not a good fit. If it's a good fit, then throw all your knowledge at it and overwhelm them with that. You know what you're doing.
Even if you don't, just act like you do and figure it out on the fly, which is a lot of us do, right?
Right.
I got a couple questions from the crowd that I want to throw in here. One is from Chris Pelkey. Sorry if I said your name wrong, but I believe it's Chris Pelkey. I went into a meeting yesterday with a few artwork mock-ups. It was a big client. As soon as I opened the proofs, they said, wow, it made the meeting go great from there. Is that a bad strategy for bigger clients that you really want to work with? My gut on this, before I throw it to Dylan, my gut is that it depends on how you feel about it. I'm not a fan of having anybody do any work for free. So I would say, like, if you have the time and the resources and you can make some mock-ups first and go into it, of course, people are visual learners. So if you have some visual aids, it's helpful. Just don't overextend yourself and do a bunch of comp work for free just to get denied. Now you spent all that time that you could have utilized trying to get other sales potentially. So I'd say go with your gut on that. It sounds like it worked out really well for you in that instance, Chris. I would just say just be cautious, or at least conscientious, doing that every time to not overextend yourself on what you can do.
Like making samples, you mean?
Sounds like you made mock-ups. So like if it's an easy to do mock-up, like if you have their art already and you can throw it together, great. But if you're making like design work just to go in and be like, hey, I made some designs for you. I was hoping you'd like it. They're probably going to shoot you down. And then you spent how long making designs for them for nothing, right?
I'm on both sides because I feel like if it's just it's shitty to say, but if it's a basic customer of somebody that's just going to order like 50 shirts, 100 shirts, whatever, then I would say what we would do is we would probably just take their artwork they gave us and just throw it on a mock-up and make it look good and be like, this is what it's going to look like. That's basic sales for us. It's just like mocking things up, giving them the options and saying, you know, these are the shirts or whatever. But if it's a big customer you're trying to get into or go to, like there's one right now I'm working on that's like a massive customer, like one of the biggest ones we've ever dealt with. And I went to like 3 of my best freelance designers and I'm like, hey, give me like a sketch sheet of like, you know, 4 or 5 designs to pitch to this company, because the fact of it took me years to get into. And I'm okay with fronting the bill to the freelancers to be like, get me ace artwork to where, because the thing is, they don't know I'm doing this. Like I could come into, we're having a meeting and going over like logistics and like all this other stuff. Like they want to work with me, but they just want to talk like boring stuff. But I want to go into that meeting and be like, hey, actually, here's all the info you asked for, but also here's like a bunch of new shit for you. Because that was one of their biggest things, is they have like bland designs. So I took that immediately as like, I'm going to get to work on the designs so that I can go to that meeting with sketches, not finished designs, but sketches, to let them know that like we put hours of work into this already. Not like, okay, you have a phone call at 3:00, I guess I'll talk to you and like just go over stuff. So it depends on the customer. Like I feel like with getting new big clients, it's a lot of risk involved, but just don't like overexert yourself, but like take the time to like not necessarily sweet talk them, but just like let them know you're serious. You know what I mean? So like if it's just making digital mock-ups, I feel like that's like easy. But going the extra mile of doing sketches and maybe ordering samples for a meeting, like I said, samples are cheap. You're going to use them at some point. Like just put them on a shelf. You can print with them later. But like get prepared as much as possible when you go to meetings.
That's good. That's good feedback. I agree. I got another one from Denial Print Co. Do you think there is good money versus bad money? How are you saying no to bad money, specifically for his PIA customers? I'm not sure what that means. PIA customers you've worked with before and just aren't worth it. So when it comes to the good money versus bad money, there is good money versus bad money. Look, as a print shop, we've all printed some questionable things. We're like, I don't know about that. But if it's something that is against the pillars of who I am as a human, if it's something that I'm like, I'm not about that, I don't want it. Right? Don't give on who you are and who your shop is. It's okay to turn that work down. Or if someone comes through that you just kind of know as a shisty human being that you don't really want to be a part of, then it's also okay to say no. Be aware they're going to go somewhere else with their money, which is okay. Don't just sell your soul for a job, right? Stay true to who you are, but also don't be too uptight and a total square about things. If it's a little outside your comfort zone, you could probably do it. If it's a polar opposite to who you are and what you believe in, then you shouldn't do it, right? If you're a shop that does a lot of church stuff and someone comes in and it's like the exact opposite, that's probably not your cup of tea. You probably are better off giving them somebody else that will be a better fit for them. And you can do that eloquently and nicely as well. I'd be like, honestly, I don't think I'm the best fit for you, but here's a couple of recommendations, some shops that you might be better fit for. That's a good thing. You're being a good human. You're helping them go somewhere they're probably going to have a better experience too.
I feel like that's one of the best. That's one of the best things you can say to them, is that it's that breakup thing of like, it's me, not you kind of thing. It's like you telling them that you're not sure that we're going to be the best fit for you. Because if you go to that guy, like you're saying, that church guy, and be like, well, you got fucking like demons spitting blood on babies, like probably not going to go over well with half of our staff. We have printed that, and that's a legit amazing shirt we have. Brian wanted to submit it to the impressions, like, you know, the awards thing.
But by the way, PIA is pain in the ass. Appreciate it. So PIA, pain in the ass customers.
But it's just like letting them know, like, hey, I don't think we can do this design justice, or we're not best suited for that print method or whatever. And it's like, that's the nice way of doing it. We definitely get customers all the time that are just dickheads, that we're just like, yeah, sorry, like we don't want, like we're not going to work with you, or we don't want to work with you. And like I've given our team like full reign to just be, you know, if someone comes to them and is just a dick on the email or a phone or whatever, I just tell them like, oh, okay, just turn them down. Like, I don't need the money. Like, I'm not hurting for orders. Like, and that's not saying that being like an asshole. That's just like, better ones will come along that are less headaches. Because the truth of it is, if that dude's an asshole in quoting phase, he's going to be a bigger asshole when he gets the shirts and he brings out like a ruler for every shirt, or like the color doesn't match his fucking crayons or his truck or some bullshit that he was trying to like get you to do. So like, there's way more headaches. It's that red flag. It's the first red flag of like, if they're a dick on the phone, they're going to be a bad customer the rest of the way down the line. And the funny thing is it's always the smaller orders that take up the most amount of your time. And I don't want to say small order all the time, but it's just like, we have customers that order, 100 to 500 to 1,000 shirts like monthly or every other week. And it's always one email long. It's like, here's my artwork, here's my sizes, send me the invoice. And I make the mock-up, I send them an invoice, they pay it, we print it, we ship it, done. But it's those people that want like 12 shirts that are like 55 emails deep and they're complaining about everything. Those are the ones that you just get to a point where you're just like, you notice red flags early on and you're like, I don't think you're a good fit. And then you move on to the next order that's going to be a better fit for you. And then eventually you weed out all those people.
That's a really good point. I think we're getting close to time here. We've had a lot of great discussions. I think there's one thing that is in sort of the background, and we've been hinting at it, but let's just talk about it. How do you project confidence when you're making your pitches? How do you use confidence to your benefit? And maybe even like we were mentioning a little earlier, how do you fake it till you make it? How do you, if you don't feel confident, how do you make other people think you do?
I know for me, the confidence is just in education. Like, if I know enough about the topic, I can talk about it all day long. But if, somebody comes in here, like, it's funny with me, like, I like motorcycles and I like all this other stuff. But the big thing for me about the motorcycle stuff is I am not an engine guy. Like, I can't fix shit to save my life when it comes to motors. So that's the worst part for me, is like, I like to ride and I could go to all these like motorcycle event things. And the very first thing everybody does when you have like a cool bike is they're like, oh, like, this is a fucking, what year is this? And what did you do to this? And I'm just like, I didn't build it. Like, I paid a good buddy of mine who owns a shop to build it. I just love to ride the thing. So it's like, I feel uncomfortable in those situations. So like with me, with screen printing, it's like, I'm just constantly educating myself to where I know I'm not going to know more than the customer most of the time. So if you walk in knowing that you're more educated on the topic than they are, it's an easy conversation. So I feel like that's the confidence you would need. It isn't necessarily being shy and talking to somebody. It's just knowing that whatever question they're going to have, you probably have a pretty good answer.
I think that 100% agree. I think that confidence is also something that is a learned thing. Some people have it automatically. Sometimes the most confident are also sometimes the dumbest in the room. So you don't want to be overly confident. But I think confidence is definitely important, and it comes from when you play in your lane. You talk about what you know, and you're serious about what you know. Asking questions is also a great thing. If you're getting a little unconfident in the conversation, start asking good pointed questions. Let them teach you something. When you let someone teach you something, it lets them become confident, and they have all sorts of endorphins and good things happening in their brain then they're relating to seeing you, because you've now got them teaching you something. So in Dylan's example, I don't know shit about motorcycles, right? Can you teach me something about my bike? What is this engine? Right. Well, now they're gonna be like, oh, hell yeah. And they're going to teach something to Dylan. They're going to get excited. They're going to have a relationship started with Dylan because of that conversation. There's a great TED talk out called Fake It Till You Are It. It's one that I watched years ago, and it was like a neurosurgeon. And she was saying that, look, all of us are faking it till we make it. That's not like a bad practice. That's just getting through life. So the thing is these doctors and stuff, they're learning, they're trying, they're failing. Hopefully not on you, right? But they're learning.
Doctors was a bad one. I don't want to hear about that.
But either way, they're trying until they are those things. All of us. I'm trying to be the best as a printer until I become one of the best, right? I'm trying to be the best consultant until I am one of the best. I'm trying to be the best at working with software until I am. Like, you're all just faking it till you are it. So don't be afraid to kind of overextend yourself and be more of the expert than you actually are. You're going to force yourself to become the expert that you're pushing yourself into. I do have a question from John Botarf, that I'm probably butchering your last name, John. Sorry. John has a question. Dylan, how long did you take to go from oh shit, what did we get ourselves into, to we got this? Or did you ever have those feelings? Or how do you take a 2 manual shop and grow to the point where you're seen as a pro and we can talk and walk the talk? If any of that makes sense. So it does make sense. So how did you, I guess he's asking, did you ever actually think to yourself, you're in over your head, or were you always kind of confident, like, we'll figure it out, we got it? And any words of advice to help a shop looking to grow?
Most days. I feel like the thing is you need to take risks and realize that sometimes things aren't going to work out the best, but you're going to learn from those things. Like we literally just had that like this week where we got asked to do this rush order for this like real, big comedian that was coming through that's going, and it was just straight up a picture of his face. And Brian looked at it and was like, I can separate, like Brian's great at separations and everything. And like, but it was one of those things that was like, literally we had 2-day turnaround and we had to get it done and knock it out. And usually with that kind of stuff, that's like a photorealistic thing. It's like, all right, let's do, do we do simulated process or do we do CMYK? And then we were like, okay, well, if we do CMYK, we want to add like 2 or 3 spot colors onto this to get it to pop in certain areas whenever we want to do. And it's like, his instant reaction was like, nope, don't want to do it. Give them their money back. I don't want to even fuck with this thing because I've only got 2 days to mess with it. And realistically, all we had was like hours to mess with it because we got the shirts on Wednesday at 1 and they had to be out the door at 5 o'clock. So like getting it up, testing it, wanting to see if we wanted to add things. We didn't really have the time. So luckily we did it. It worked out well, but it's one of those things. It's like, I could have just said no. But if me saying yes and chancing it and like doing everything in our power to get it right probably earned us that client to get a lot more big clients. So I feel like every day we get orders where we're just like Matt said, if it's some like location thing or it's some kind of print technique thing, it's like, all right, well, I'll take the time in the turnaround to do as much research as I can, do tests, and then knock that job out at the end. Gains me that knowledge on how to do that for all future orders or to get that customer that is up with this new trend or something. I feel like you just need to take chances. I'm never like fully confident on anything because there's always new inks and new procedures and new things with screen printing all the time. So that's one of the best things about doing Shirt Show with Andy is just kind of like always learning new things all the time. Like you're never going to know everything there is to know about screen printing. You're just not. You just kind of always have to be in it.
Love it. I got one last question I want to ask before we get ready to close up. It's not totally on topic, but it's something that's a good question. Marco Polo Villas has that question. What separation system do you guys use? I had Separation Studio 4, but now it's not compatible with my new HP printer. Sep Studio is great. There's a lot of other RIP softwares you can use that are like active plugins in Photoshop. There's a bunch that are out there. I'll be honest, in the last couple of years, I've seen the amount of people utilizing those go down a bit, and then more people are utilizing outsourcers to outsource artwork to graphic source or independent outsourcers to get that work done. Because a lot of, okay, I can use the system and I can kind of hodgepodge it and get to where it needs to go, or I can just have an expert do it and just move on to my next task and then get the art ready when I'm ready for it. What's your take on that, Dylan?
I feel like if you want to stand out in your shop as doing a specific kind of artwork, you should really have an in-staff design team or design person that can do really good steps and kind of always grow with that. I always botch this because people ask me all the time. I can't remember if it's like T-Seps or Quick Seps, or it might be Sep Studio. I don't remember. But really, we're not using it for its full intended purpose. We're basically getting a design that looks like it's like 100 colors. We're putting it in the step program, pulling out the hard colors that are hard to manually separate, and then we're narrowing those down, tweaking them all by hand to get the final product, because we know with dot gain and what screen mesh we're using and what tensions, like all these things, we know certain colors are going to act a certain way, and that just comes with experience. So my thing on that is, like Matt said, is either A, get really good at it and a lot of practice, even if you're just doing them after work, just to test things. Like constantly test and improve yourself on things. Like take the extra hour or two after work or on weekends to come in and just print something yourself. Like print a picture of a person's face and see where your values are and what you need to do as far as like tweaking and contrast and everything else. That way, when that job comes, you can do it right. Or you can utilize something like Graphic Source, and there are people that do it all day long, so you can pay them to do it. But it just depends on your market. Like if you're going to be in the market of just doing cool prints all day long, that's complicated. You don't want to rely on another company to do it. You want to be able to do it in house. But if you're just knocking out like sports shirts and basic kind of artwork stuff, then it's up to you on what you want to do.
Yeah, and if you're doing spot stuff and you're not really getting to like sim process, you need to learn how to do separations in house. I definitely still do think that there's a place and a need for these other softwares. But if you're a smaller company too, and you just can't necessarily afford to outsource, you need to be able to take a basic print and do a separation, channel separation, a vector separation. A lot of Udemy classes you can take, Lynda classes, Skillshare,
just
straight up YouTube. Exactly. There's so many things you can do, and you really need to have a good grasp. The smaller of a shop you are, the more of a grasp you have to have on all the processes. When you get to be a little bit larger, it's a lot more common to have like an owner who can't separate, can't print. They have the ability and the funds to do those things and have specialists in those departments. Then if you're a smaller shop, you kind of have to learn how to be a master of all to get really good until you can grow.
Yep. And like I said, just do stuff on your own. Don't wait for that order to come, because when that order comes and you're like, oh, let me learn how to do this now, you're going to fuck it up.
Yeah, you're a print shop. Make sweet shit for yourself, and that's where you test it, right?
Right.
Make your own stuff and make it awesome. Go, oh, I made myself better in the process, and now I can help my customers out more.
Yep.
A lot of great information in this chat, gentlemen. We are at an hour, and I'm so glad we got all that information in this hour. We got so much good stuff to think about, to mediate on, all that. Watch it again. Watch it again. Make money. Watch it again. It's going to be right here at the same link in just a couple minutes. It usually takes 2 minutes of buffer, and then you can watch the replay right here. You can send it around. We're going to put it on YouTube real soon. We do these every 2 weeks, so you'll see us again, not next Thursday, but the Thursday after that. But most of all, I want to thank Dylan. Dylan, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all this information with us. Remember, you can go find Shirt Show at Shirt Show Official on Instagram, or just Shirt Show on YouTube. Go find it. Go subscribe. You're going to find even more information there. And, of course, if you have any questions about Printavo at all, you could always email us. Go ahead, send it to me. I'm over at sales@printavo.com, and we can help with any of this information or with anything else Printavo. So with that, thank you guys so much. Again, Dylan, thank you so much valuable information. And I hope everybody has a great rest of their day. All right.
Thanks, everybody. Bye. Thanks, Dylan.